So now it's the turn of Marcella Florence that will talk about the app See National Museum of African American History and Culture and Change America.
Good morning. I'm actually going to talk about two apps today that we released earlier this year, Changing America to Be Free and View NMAAHC. And these are two very different apps with very different goals and very different receptions. So I think they're actually great to sort of show a broad range of how we've thought about different projects and what has worked and what hasn't. And these are both available on iPad, and the View NMAHC app is available on Android and other iOS devices as well. So I really encourage you to download them. I didn't put a lot of slides in here about their functionality in the hopes that I would then encourage you to ramp up our numbers by downloading them. Changing America to Be Free was initially conceptualized as an interactive in our current exhibit at the National Museum of American History, Changing America, the Emancipation Proclamation 1863 and the March on Washington 1963. We don't do short names in our organization at all. And so this app was conceived of primarily as an interactive within the exhibit. And what we wanted to do in the section on the Emancipation Proclamation was really give voice to individuals who experienced emancipation, but try and tell this complex story that not everyone experienced the same thing. And some of it depended on where you lived, and a lot of it depended on who you were. So we wanted the opportunity to share those stories and for people to really make a personal connection with the history. And that was something that we felt it wasn't being displayed as well in the rest of the exhibition. So we worked with the exhibit team from the very beginning. We found a place within the gallery for it. We designed a cart that we would put 3 iPads on. We worked really hard to think about accessibility, so we have one iPad that's at sort of wheelchair height and then 2 that are a little bit higher. And then we thought that, well, if we're doing this on iPads, we might as well release it as a mobile app too, because why not? And so there are actually 2 different versions. The one that's in the gallery has a couple of different features, but they're very, very similar overall. And this is the sort of entry screen for the app. And as you can see, there are 4 main areas in which people can use the app. You can browse through historic figures to read these first-hand accounts of emancipation. You can make a connection, and this takes you through essentially a pretty query tool that we've designed to allow you to search through the database of quotes that we've got.
Marcella, if you choose the presentation view, make your slides bigger.
Nancy has instructed me not to do that.
Sorry.
Either way, I can do back and forth. Dan, why don't you download the app and then you can follow along. We do have a Tell Us Your Thoughts button, and this is actually sort of a great way to continue the conversation was started by the National Portrait Gallery, a meta conversation about conversations. We did have a question. We asked people how they thought they would respond to emancipation. It is likewise connected to Twitter. We have likewise gotten almost no responses. It has not worked at all. And I have some thoughts about that. I've been doing a lot of research into the ways that people communicate using social media, and I'm not entirely sure that even asking a really pointed question like this is the way to get people really involved in a discussion. It doesn't, anyway, but that's a whole side conversation that I would love to have with anyone who wants to have it at some point in the future. So here are some of the challenges that we faced, and the biggest one was the contracting process, and I'm glad to know I'm not alone in that. We began the process for the competitive bidding and the request for quotations as early as we possibly could. So this, of course, has to follow the timeline of a temporary exhibition development. We conceived of the idea, we worked with our exhibition team, we got their sign-off, we brought in an intern to do some research, and once the intern had completed the very first round of preliminary research that we could send out as a potential example with the package, we sent it out. We got the bids back in. We moved pretty quickly on our end. We got this into OCON, and then nothing happened for a long time. There was a lot of back and forth. The exhibit opened without it. A few more months went by, and then it finally got approved. So it didn't open with the exhibition. That meant that there was kind of a hole in the exhibition where it was supposed to be, that it wasn't fulfilling that goal. But it was really hard to take away lessons learned because we started as early as we possibly could for an exhibit development. And the lesson I take away from this is that maybe designing something on a mobile platform that needs to open with the exhibit isn't possible right now at the Smithsonian. And that makes me really sad, but I don't have I don't have any other thoughts about that at this moment. We also faced some challenges working with the exhibition team who didn't really understand what this meant or what it could do. So initially, we had this challenge that they just didn't see how this could add to the exhibition, and we surmounted that in some ways by developing a PowerPoint presentation showing them how we thought this would work. And our PowerPoint presentation looked like this. It's not very pretty, it's not very elegant. The final results look like this, and it looks a lot better. But the other challenge we faced once we sold them through the PowerPoint presentation is that they expected it to look exactly like this. And so we really had some challenges kind of on both ends there, both convincing them of the validity of the project and then convincing them to let designers do their design work and their job. And I took away some lessons from this, but I'm not sure how applicable they are broadly, which is that I kind of just went with the developers and developed it and signed off on it and then showed it to the exhibition team, which I don't think is the best way to work. And it's not something I would recommend, but it's something that really worked for this project because once we had the designs in place, the exhibition team was really happy with them. But before this, they would spend hours without me or anyone working on this project in the room, and the curators would get together and discuss what would go first on the page, whether it would be the quotes that you see at the bottom here or the description of the person, and they were thinking of it and conceiving of it as an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and what would go first and what would be read first. And so they spent a lot of their time working on that, which was not really a part of the process. The next thing that we continue to face is upkeep, new versions. As you know, there's a new iOS version that came out not too long ago. We had conceived of a maintenance plan that lasted as long as the exhibit did, so that's how long the contract lasted. The exhibit got extended, though, and the contract didn't. So we currently don't have a contract in place for maintenance, although the exhibit is up another year. We're working to see if we can find the money to extend the contract, and I should say that the developers we worked with on this project were fantastic and have been very good at giving us really competitive prices and really want to continue to work with us. But then that means going back through contracting too. So we'll see how that process goes, and it may be that we end up with a maintenance contract in place after the exhibit's closed. Publicity has been a little bit of an issue, and this is a challenge that we didn't expect to face. We expected that we would have a budget for publicity, and then our budgets got slashed a lot this past year in sort of the middle of the year after we'd planned out these projects. So the money had already been apportioned for this, thankfully, but the planned publicity, the planned printing of brochures, et cetera, advertising for it got cut. So our marketing and public affairs team did a press release. The press release came out the day before they issued a press release about us restoring and acquiring a slave cabin on Edisto Island, and you can just imagine which story got picked up. This was not it, especially because this wasn't able to be advertised and talked about with the exhibit opening. So there were lots of stories about that, and in meetings with our public affairs team, we felt like we could have gotten a lot more publicity for it if it had been released with the exhibit. But since it wasn't, it was kind of an after-the-fact add-on piece, and no one was really interested in covering that. The final thing was gallery placement. So as I mentioned at the very beginning of this process, we worked with our exhibition team, we worked with the designers for the space, and we found a place that really put this in the location where the Emancipation Proclamation was being discussed, where there was some context given for it, and that this would be appropriately placed within the narrative of the exhibition. When we got it in the exhibition, the designers and some folks there decided they didn't like it, so they took it out. And this is possibly sort of a downside of having it on a cart that could be moved. Even though the cart was lowered to the ground and looked like casework, turns out you can move it. So they said move it. Now it's sitting outside of the gallery and it does not get used. It just doesn't. No one walking through the hallway on their way into or out of the gallery is in the mindset to sit and read these stories. So we're really glad now that we released it as a mobile app, because we've seen quite a bit of uptake on that, and that is really the primary and sole way that this is getting a lot of attention. We've had about 4,000 downloads to date, and only on iPad. So we're getting ready to release it for iPhone and Android, and hopefully we'll see an uptake there as well. And here it is. This is actually not quite where it's located, but it's very close to this. This was if it rolled out a little bit. So, opportunities. We're developing now some educator guides to go with this. We originally decided not to do that because the exhibit was going to close relatively soon once the app actually got released. But now that it's open a while longer, we have the opportunity to expand our educational offerings to go along with the app. And we're using the app and some of the content for it and a new video conferencing program we're developing for students as well. So we're seeing a lot more opportunities to engage with it educationally. We have been able to partner with American History and their education department to do some promotion to their established teacher resources, which has also seen a huge uptick in our downloads when they do that, so we're really excited by it. And repurposing the content, we'll be able to continue to use it in a lot of different ways, so I think we're really excited about that.